Gustavo Cortinas' album, and the drum also sings. And track 4, Tu Resiliencia es Resistencia. Uh, so Gustavo is here at WLUW Chicago 88.7 FM. Welcome, Gustavo Cortinas.
Thank you so much, Trudy. Very happy to be here. Thanks for giving a little space for this music on your airwaves.
Yes, definitely. So you are a drummer, and then you have your vocalist as well, which is who is that? And she has such a beautiful voice.
We have different guest vocalists on this record, but on that particular track is the amazing La Paula Herrera, a Chilean singer who now resides in our beautiful city of Chicago, and she is amazing. You're right.
And when all that drumming in the background is you?
There's actually 3 of us drummers on this record. It's a very special album because it brings together 3 different drummers, all from very different places, I think, in the creative and sphere, and also with very different backgrounds. And everybody brings a little bit of their heart and their experience into the mix. It's drummer Dave King, and also Isaiah Spencer on drums, and then me as well, Gustavo Cortiñas.
Well, Gustavo, you have a long history with the drums. Did you start becoming interested when in drums at 10 years old?
Yes, absolutely. I was 10 years old. I was at home. My brother was playing the drums, and he was late to one of his drum lessons, and my dad was like, well, we're going to have to use this drum lesson some other way, so today you're starting on the drums. And I always wanted to do everything my brother did, so it was quite a pleasure to jump in on his behalf and study some drums.
Well, then, did you and your brother ever play together?
Not yet. That's a good question, and maybe something that we have to do in the future. I'm going to be home for a little bit this year, and we're going to coincide, and thank you for giving me that beautiful idea.
So your brother is still in Mexico?
Yes, he lives on the southern part of Mexico in a place called Chiapas.
Chiapas, okay. And you are based both in, well, you call Chicago home, but of course you teach too. You teach in Mexico, and then you also teach in Chicago, so you're very busy.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm Chicago is home base. I'm here with my wife and my daughter, and a lot of my projects come through here, but I try to always keep a leg in Mexico to visit, to play music with musicians over there, and it's the place that gave me birth and that saw me grow, and it's a huge part of who I am, and I like to still be a part of it.
Do you stay in touch with Mexico because you do want to keep on learning and growing, and of course there's also always something to learn and grow from, even from your home place?
Absolutely, especially from your home place. Sometimes you learn about the place itself. Sometimes you learn about yourself by going and retracing the steps that you once lived. And it's also, I think, very important to give back to the places that saw you grow and that gave you so much. And so I like to come back, and I like to feel like my music is a dialogue with Mexican history and with everything that I learned and lived over there.
Could you give us an example of something that you learned about yourself when, maybe in the last 10 years when you went back to Mexico? And maybe did you apply that, what you learned, to your music?
Absolutely, absolutely. I am constantly revisiting Mexican history and relearning the different perspectives that I was exposed to while growing up. And I go back and revisit them, whether it is history books or literature, and very much all of that comes into dialogue within my music, whether it's me researching musical styles that maybe have been inside my ear for a very long time but that I never purposefully studied, or whether it's researching a certain period of time or a certain Mexican writer. That's something that teaches me about myself and my history all the time, and then I try to inspire my music from what I gather there. And then, of course, just I feel like you visit your family as an old person, and you see different parts of them, and you also see different parts of yourself when you see them, and that's also a very beautiful and inspiring thing.
When you go back to Mexico and study the history, culture, do you are you able to study the folk music? Are you able to listen to any recordings of various folk music? Is there still a lot to learn for you?
There is an infinite amount of things for me to learn. I'm very lucky to have been a part of a very beautiful initiative that the Mexican government holds for artists. It used to be called the Fondo Nacional para la Cultura y las Artes, which is basically the Mexican National Endowment of the Arts. And they used to realize this really beautiful program where they would bring, and actually they still do it, it's called Jóvenes Creadores, Youthful Creators. And they would gather upcoming artists in all the artistic disciplines that you can imagine, and they would give them grants to create a project, and then they would do these gatherings where they would all interact and get to know each other. And I got to hang out with lots of amazing musicians, poets, dancers, filmmakers, uh, native language poets from Mexico, which is how some of the guests from this particular record came to associate themselves with me. And so there's this beautiful dialogue from which I always learn, and there's opportunities for collaboration, and it's very beautiful. I'm always trying to learn, and I always try to keep my ear open for new stuff, and even to see old stuff through a new perspective as well.
That's very interesting. A project with all different kinds of talents pulled together. So is that like one program and then everybody does a little bit and contribute to like one storyline?
Well, it depends on the different projects, but in this particular project, uh, there's not as much a storyline as there is a landscape that we are trying to create. And the landscape uh, is particularly about diversity and plurality. So there was as a creative project, this was a project in which I had to let go of a lot of the freedom uh, because I wanted this project to be pluralistic and representative, and if it's just one person's vision, then that is lost. And the idea was to share a space with different visions so that everybody could bring a little bit of themselves. And that's the whole point of this album. I have a lot of music that I've made in the past that gets very social and kind of critiques our history and the way that we have ended and the systems that rule us now. And it's very easy to criticize, but I wanted to make a project that kind of maybe showed the way of how we not tear down past structures, but how we build something in the future. And for me, that building has to come from plurality, from communication and interaction with our ancestry and with our history. And so I tried to bring these things together, and it was very important to bring different people's visions and feelings and thoughts and histories into this one project. And that requires letting go of the creative process a lot, but I think it's also very beautiful.
So that the Mexican Endowment of the Arts, they funded, partially funded this record, this The Drum Also Sings.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that's the project you're talking about. Wow. And the art too on the cover. So that's one of the artists too that contributed, that were part of the project.
Absolutely. That is a great artist who has become a really great friend of mine. His name is Roberto Ferreira. He's actually a Mexican artist who resides here in Chicago.
Mm.
And because this project was about interacting with our history and with ancestrality and percussion and all of this, he was the right choice because he, on top of being an amazing artist who does carvings on wood and painting and all these different types of mediums. He is also a participant in a native Aztec dance called Danza Azteca de Concheros, and he's a captain in that tradition, which means he's very in tune with the ancestral traditions of Mexico through percussion and singing, on top of being a great visual artist of many mediums. And it was a very natural thing to cooperate with him to create this project because he's very much in tune with that history and those traditions.
So he's a percussionist too, and he also sings as well.
I don't know about his singing as a professional singer, but within the ceremonial aspects of the music that he does sing and he recites stuff with it.
Oh, so it's kind of like chanting a little bit.
Exactly.
Oh, and that's a part of the history and the culture.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Is that religious or what is that connected with?
To some people, it's religious. To some people, it's just a spiritual way to reconnect with their ancestries. It depends where people are coming from, but it's definitely spiritual.
And in Mexico, how deeply intertwined is ancestral worship with with religion?
I think there's a really, really, really long and complicated history that answers that question. Just because the main religion in Mexico is Catholic Christianity, and there's also a history of colonialism that is tied to that history, and through that history and that religion that was imposed historically by the Spanish and the Spanish Inquisition, there is also this thing that we call syncretism. And syncretism is when the people grab little pieces of their own or past religions and weave them together into the practices of the new religion that they are adopting. So there will be certain figures, there will be musical traditions, there will be all these things that get woven together into this new tradition, and we call those syncretisms. And it's very, very prominent, and some of the music and that worship comes from European Catholic traditions. Some of it comes from the native traditions from the ancestral cultures that lived in Mexico. And it depends where you're at and who you ask the answer and the degrees in which that happens.
So it's a little bit like the Santeria, but Santeria is syncretism too, but it's from a different part of the world, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, very, very interesting. And I read your website, and you're also very interested in activism and addressing the wrongs of the past, and then weaving your stories into your music. So could you give us an idea about how you do that?
Well, every project I've done has done it very differently, but one project that is very emblematic for that is an album that I released in 2021. The name of the album is Desafío Candente, and that record is...
And what does that mean?
Desafío Candente means incandescent act of defiance. And that album is wholly inspired by a book which is called The Open Veins of Latin America by a very popular Uruguayan writer called Eduardo Galeano. And that book talks about the history of colonialism, imperialism, and neoliberalism in Latin America and the effects that it had on its people. And so I chose, for example, for that project, 13 different points in time that are talked about throughout the book, and I used those stories as inspiration for the material of music that was going to be. And we actually came together with Galeano's widow, who gave us permission to use some of the text from that book. So there's spoken word from the book, which uses 13 speakers from different countries all around Latin America. and then depending on the period or the place in which that history is talking about, we use musical influences from those traditions to infuse those songs. So there's a little bit of native Mexican music, there's some atonal European military march stuff, there's some Cuban for Cuban traditions in there. There's actually a little bit of influence from African musical traditions, as well as Peruvian, Brazilian. So it all kind of comes together, and different influences are shown in different parts of that story.
What about that author? Did he do any cameo?
Eduardo Galeano.
Yes.
He was unfortunately already passed away by the time we did this project. That's why we worked with his widow.
Oh. Well, what inspired you to do that album? Was it? It was shortly after the pandemic. Was there something happening in the world that inspired you to take on that project, or you just left the book?
Well, that book it came out shortly after the pandemic, but it was cooking for like 3 years, so it was being put together way before the pandemic. And I think everything that's happening in the world then and every minute since and before it kind of inspires me. I think, like I said, a lot of my music tries to talk about how things are. And I think for me, it was important before starting that dialogue about how things are to start with a project that talked about how we got to the place that we're in. And I thought that book, that project, Desafío Candente, was a good starting point because it talks about the history that brought us to the point that we are in now. And then we can talk about the point that we are in now, but it's good to establish a framework from where we're coming from before we have that conversation. Doesn't matter if we're writing a philosophical essay or we're doing art. For me, that turned out very important. So that's where the inspiration came from.
Well, you've studied history. You studied this book, and you probably see how there's eraser. What you see in the history books is different from how history actually is. How is your music reflective of that? Do you try to address the hidden part of history?
Well, yeah, the history is not necessarily an objective timeline. It's an interpretation, and usually it's interpreted by the people who get to write it, and it's usually the very privileged people who get to write it, right? And there's some really amazing writers who I admire, including Eduardo Galeano, but also Howard Zinn, for example, who make it their business to write about history by including the perspectives that they seem to perceive have been erased from that history, you know? And so I think when we're trying to listen, doesn't matter if it's a story about something that happened 500 years ago or about something that happened yesterday or that's happening today, it's important to hear all of the perspectives so that we can understand the facts, which are probably 25% of that history, and then we can get into the experiences, which are very different from everybody who's experiencing. And there's a huge spectrum on how we experience events, you know? And so it's important to get a wide palette of that spectrum of how people are experiencing so that we can inform ourselves of how one little event actually affected people, you know?
That's wonderful. That's a totally different perspective of studying history. So what you're saying is history is there. Well, only one part is the history. The rest of that 75% is how it affects people, their perspectives of that history, and that informs the entire history.
Yeah, and don't listen to my percentages because I'm just coming up with those with no basis. But yeah, the idea that facts it's themselves are just a very small part of how we actually look at history, and that the interpretation and how we actually choose to look at that history has a lot more to do with how we end up interpreting certain events, right? And it matters a lot that we look at those individuals' experiences and how those individuals are affected by the facts, you know? And so, because facts are very cold and they don't teach us necessarily always. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't teach us about morality or ethics, right? But if we forget about the facts, well, not forget about the facts, but give the facts a little bit of a perspective or a background on human existence and how it's being affected and changing through those facts, I think we can get a deeper understanding about uh, our world and our society.
Um, what was your education like? How much of your education was in the U.S.? How much of your education was in Mexico?
I grew up in Mexico and I was educated in Mexico up until the end of high school. And then I came to the US to study my undergrad and I did my master's as well here. And uh, I continue to hopefully educate myself a little bit every day.
Because you seem to be a student of history as well as music, and I was just wondering your perspective and in Mexico when you learn history, are there more of the perspectives over there rather than in the U.S.? Do you find any difference in the way uh, in the perspectives that will help you understand history that you just spoke about?
I don't necessarily know if everybody in Mexico gets to study history the way I do, but I had some really great teachers that talked a lot about understanding the different perspectives and looking not only at the history books, but looking at primary evidence and secondary evidence in history and analyzing, okay, you have this piece of evidence, but that evidence isn't truth. That even like unless it's primary evidence, and sometimes primary evidence, if it's a diary, it's already a perspective on a certain event,
Mm-hmm.
right? So knowing like what exactly is what we're looking at, where it comes from, what is the purpose and the background behind it. That's something that was really enforced by one of my good history teachers, and it makes a huge difference, I think.
Mm-hmm. You I think you mentioned in the past that you write your music to help people understand what's happening, like to in a, some things that you see, and then you want to comment about. You use the music. Is there is, is there any way that you will be able to use music in politics? Do you think? And then how could it meld together somehow to make a difference? Have you ever been inspired to do that?
I don't know if music necessarily informs people on facts, and I don't really think that that's what I'm trying to do. I think people should read the news and people should read history books. Um, I think um, for me, informing my music from this has a double or two or three purposes. Number one is that um, I love how thinking about all these different things makes me think about music. It takes me into different directions, and I like the creative directions that it makes me do. Number two, rather than informing people about what it is that is happening, because I'm like I said, I'm not a historian, and this is not a newspaper or anything, but I think it can promote dialogue and it can promote understanding, which those are very different things from like teaching people what is actually happening, but just maybe showing people a certain perspective and promoting a dialogue that people can like open up to, you know? And the third thing is sometimes because of the projects that I do, like a lot of people told me that after Desafio Candente, for example, they went and they bought the open veins of Latin America. So that one little project encouraged at least a few people to go buy that book and inform themselves through that and other perspectives. And I think that's also very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any instances where maybe there was some kind of event, that political or otherwise, that people asked you to help with the compose the music to add the tone, to correct the proper tone and atmosphere for that event?
Not yet. Nobody has ever asked me to do that. At some point, I had a friend who was working on a mayoral campaign for somebody who didn't win the mayoral race. But he asked me if one of my pieces could be a part of an ad that was going with this person's campaign. And I looked at the framework of what this person was talking about and what they were offering and the dialogues that they were trying to establish through their political platform, and it coincided with some of the stuff that I believe, and so I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely, you can use my song for this. That's the only, the closest thing that has been.
Was that a mayoral campaign in Chicago?
Yes, it was here in Chicago, but it was a primary. It didn't make it.
Well, maybe next time. Anyway, so you are political, and then but you there's a lot of you see injustices. But how do you have that feeling? How the music is sounding, the beats of the, let's say the beat of that the injustice, the beat of the how to address the injustice, because you're about percussion. I just want to pick your brain a little bit about how you put this together.
Yeah, that the question of that is a little bit tricky because one of the reasons why I like to compose in this way is that it takes me into new directions, and so I don't always have the same method.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like to have the same method because maybe that will provide the same results every time, and I'm not interested in having the same results every time.
Mm-hmm.
So every time it's different. Sometimes it's a song with lyrics, and it'll start with lyrics, and then maybe from the lyrics I will devise a rhythm and a melody and then a harmony. Sometimes it will start with a bass line, and from the bass line I will develop a harmony and maybe a melody and then a rhythm with the drums and then eventually the melody, so the opposite way. Sometimes I come up with just a melody and then I start building things around it. So it every occasion is very differently, and I like it being that way because that way the music never ceases to surprise me, and I like being surprised.
Yes, and it's more spontaneous and genuine.
I hope so.
So when you sometimes the melody comes to you, and then what happens? Is there something like in the background that inspires that melody? How does a melody come to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When a melody comes to me, it's just like an inspiration, and it can be that I'm having a rough time and I just decide to sing something, or it can be that I'm having a good time and I happen to sing something. Sometimes I'm dreaming and I sing a melody, and I try to keep my phone next to the bed. I have it on Do Not Disturb when I sleep, but I can still access my recorder on the phone. And if I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a nice idea, I immediately record it, and then I'll go back to bed, and the next day I will listen to it and see if it's something good. But so it can come from many different things.
That's interesting. Here's your album. Could you maybe choose one of the tracks and tell us a little bit about the creative process? Did the melody come to you? Did the idea, the feeling come to you first, and then you created the melody? Would you like to give us one story?
Absolutely. Let's talk about a song in the album called Fellowship. And this is a song that I wanted to express kind of like collective unity and dialogue, and I wanted it to be very energetic. And the inspiration comes, there's a record that I really like, and I hope you don't, hopefully it doesn't sound like I stole anything. But there's a great record called Brasileiro by Sergio Mendes, and it opens up with this really amazing percussion call. I think to record that, they had a lot more money than I do, so they went into a parking lot
Oh.
with 110 percussionists, and they recorded this amazing percussion intro that is really, really amazing, and it just sounds really, really, really joyful. And then it breaks down and they add melodies and everything. And I wanted to create something that gave that vibe. So, I was feeling something in 7/4 at the time. So I started trying to create a little bit of a call and response situation in 7/4, inspired by that, and also inspired by some sounds that I heard. I had the privilege of going to see Verdi's Requiem at a symphony center about a year and a half ago or something, and there's some really beautiful, powerful call and response sections there with the percussion, and it was kind of coming from those two things. And so I created this little call and response situation between all the drums, and then eventually we go into a melody that I carry through the drums with everybody's accompaniment, and then we all improvise together. And I should say that a lot of the music on this album, including this song that you're gonna hear, it has an actual melody and harmony, chords, and everything that's written. We just reinterpret that with just the drums. So I gave everybody who played on this, I gave them the score with all the harmony and everything, and I gave them a sample with all those melodies so that they could hear the small group harmonic melodic aspect of the song, so that then we could all reinterpret it together as a drum set trio.
Wow. And were you able to record that like on the first try? Because every try will be different if it's going to be an individual interpretation.
Oh yeah, we never. I almost never do one try in the studio. I always try to take at least two because there's lots of improvisation, and I want to hear the different directions in which we take the music, and then decide which one I like best for the album, for example. So I think this is take two of the on the record, not one. But yeah, we did two takes of this one.
Wow. And so, how long did you take for the whole album then?
The album was recorded in 2 days.
2 days.
This is a very complicated endeavor because you know a lot about mics. I saw you operating the console, so you
Yes.
understand a little bit about
The
it.
board, yes.
We have 3 drummers here. There is 46 channels
Wow.
recording. It was so we had to show up early, set up the individual thing for every drum, and we're all in the same room, so we have phasing problems that we got to worry about. So I work with an amazing engineer, Scott Steinman, who's been working on all my projects for a really long time, and he's always very worried about what's going to happen, and I love it. I always tell him, this is why I love working with you. You worry so that I don't have to. And so we show up early, and just the setup of those 46 channels so that we can record everything and everybody takes a long time. And then we start recording. And back in the day, I would try to fit it all in one day, and just to save money. And it was a very stressful time sometimes. We were able to do it. We could have probably done this record in one day, but I like, and I can give myself the benefit of having 2 days so that we can take our time with the creative process, and so that we can enjoy the process instead of just trying to bulldoze through it and get things done. Yeah, at some point, I will forget a lot of things about an album, but I always remember the amazing moments that I shared with the people while we were creating it. And so I think it's a beautiful thing to take your time with those moments and enjoy them and really sit into the creative process.
So were you ever in that? Oh, this is WLUW 88.7 FM, Chicago Sound Alliance, broadcasting live from the Water Tower campus of Loyola University. So were you in that recording room before, or was the first day, the first time you stepped into it, and then you had to first try with all the equipment that maybe you had never seen before?
So this was recorded at a very special studio. It's a world-class, kind of legendary studio here in Chicago called Electrical Audio. And I have actually recorded there many times. However, they have two studios there. They have Studio A and Studio B. And all my other projects have been recorded in Studio B, which has a very, very tall ceiling and has a really beautiful resonance for the piano and the horns. However, Studio B doesn't have 46 channels. So this project had to be recorded in Studio A. I had recorded other people's projects in Studio A, but never my own. So it was a new experience from that perspective of having my own project there. But if I have my engineer, who's like my friend and somebody that I trust, and I'm with these great musicians, there's a lot of guessing, but there's also a lot of good faith, and we just show up and do our best.
What other aspects of the music are you applying toward your conscience? What's happening in the world now? Because I do see that percolation, that frustration, and then how do you apply that to your music?
Well, like I said, this project specifically is about plurality, ancestrality, diversity, representation, and healing. I think there are some narratives right now that try to paint diversity and plurality as something that makes people weak and something that can be a problem in society. So in this particular project, I wanted to make sure that this representation and this picture of people coming together from different places to create something beautiful and powerful and healing, that was the main commentary, I think, from this project. And on the other angle, also this idea of connecting with history and ancestrality, you know. We find ourselves at an impasse in which I believe the plurality and the importance of history is perhaps trivialized and is being challenged. And it was part of my hope with this record that we could focus on that history and on the power that it has, and on the value that it has for us, and that it should not be erased, that it should be held up, and that we should learn with it and have a dialogue with it.
For every song, is there a portion of the song that interprets some kind of healing?
Oh yeah, all the music is about a feeling. All the music is about a feeling. All the music is about a dialogue. For me, it's very important that art has something to say, and so we're always trying to say something and trying to have a communication.
What about your fellow artists, the other percussionists? How do they have your views? Do you have conversations with them? How do you play together?
Yeah, absolutely. We have conversations. Some are about music, some are about the world, and we come together. We try to understand each other as human beings and as artists and as regular folk, you know, and I think all of that is very important to the creative process, you know, so that it feels warm, it feels human, it feels like a relationship and not just a transaction.
So you also, did DKs also fund part of the project? How did you present it to them and they funded, they help you fund?
Yeah, the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events is an amazing institution, an amazing program that we have here in Chicago. They have the Individual Artist Project Grant, towards which people can apply every year to develop different projects. And I was very lucky to be able to be supported by them to realize this project. And I mean, what I'm telling you right now is kind of what I presented to them. I wanted to do a project about healing and about ancestrality, and I think that resonated. Hopefully, that's why it resonated with them.
Did you also teach in Rogers Park for a time at the Flats and Sharp?
Uh, no, I taught at Flats and Sharp, but they had another one in Norwood Park.
Oh.
So I would teach at the Norwood Park location, and on occasion I would sub uh, for a good friend of mine, Joe St. Charles, who taught drums at the Rogers Park location. I would sub for him sometimes, but my primary teaching spot was the Norwood Park location.
Oh, how long were you teaching there? What are the students like?
I would have to look at my resume to remember how many years, but I would say I think I started there in 2014, and I think I probably went till just after the pandemic. So like 6 or 7 years I was teaching there, and the students, uh, to be honest, like everywhere else, every once in a while. Not every once in a while. You have more than like you have some students who are amazing, who uh, listen to what's required, who are excited about music and about the subject, and they come with their homework and they do more than their homework requires. Then there's some students that are very applied and they just do what their homework requires, and then there's some students who do a little bit less than what their homework requires, and then there's some students that just come and get the drumming by osmosis when they come to the class because they don't really practice at all. So it's a wide a wide spectrum, and I think the important thing that I learned from that is that everybody is there for a different reason, and my job is to try to help them and give them the best education and the best time that I have in the time that I had with them there, and not necessarily push my agenda of making them the world's best drummer by after a year or something. So every time a little different, but it was a great learning experience being there, and I'm very thankful to Chris Bell, who used to run the program when I was there, and she did a lot for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When you taught, so it was only percussion, right?
Yes, and only drum set there while I was there. Yeah.
Was there anywhere where you taught where you combined your were you able to combine percussion with your interest in history?
Mm, only in the sense that when I start teaching my students, I try to teach, especially the more advanced ones. I like to teach music from a perspective of history. You know, I think it's important to understand when you're studying an instrument, you should understand where the instrument comes from, who are the primary characters who have developed that instrument, and what their conditions and their life was like that propelled them to do that, you know? So in that sense, it comes together.
Mm-hmm. What about the colonialism, the impact of colonialism and history? Any of the songs over here that and the drum also sings that that are informed by that aspect of history.
Absolutely. I would say that a lot of them are, but to mention a couple, the first song that we heard today, Tu resiliencia es resistencia, that translates to your resilience is resistance, and that has lyrics that I wrote, and it very much talks about people and communities throughout history and how they are they're very the very fact that they remain today against systematic attempts to destroy them or get rid of them is a part. Is a huge revolutionary testament imprinted in history, and that's pretty much what that song talks about. Then the first song is a poem written by a Mayan poet. She writes in Tzotzil Angelina Suyul, and if you it's in Tzotzil, so it's in a Mayan language. But if you bought the record has a booklet that has translations to every lyric that it is in original language and in English and in Spanish. So you can see the what she's talking about there. Yeah, I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, so all of those songs I think have some kind of connection to that colonial past, or a lot of them do at least.
And you said that there's the first song is from your native language. What is your native language?
Not my native language, but Angelina Suyul. She's a friend of mine that I met in that program from Mexico that I talked about, that brings all these different together. And she was part of the program of lenguas originarias, original languages. And so there's a realm of poets and writers of all sorts who write in their native tongue, and they come through this program and they're encouraged to create new stuff. And Angelina was an amazing poet who was writing some stuff that sounded really beautiful, but I got to hear it not only in her language but also the translations to Spanish, and it was always very powerful and it really clicked with me. So we have worked in a couple projects since, and her native tongue is from Mayan origin, but it's called Tzotzil.
Wow. I think your projects sound a little bit like an oral history.
Well, at the very least, a little dialogue with the history.
What about the mother tongue, track number 2?
Mother tongue is a blues.
Blues?
It's a blues played by 3 drummers, no vocals, no nothing. Wynton Marsalis used to talk, I heard him say a few times that the blues is a language that everybody speaks and that brings people around the world together. So I thought that the first instrumental drum song on the record, it would be cool to feature a blues where everybody, all these 3 drummers that come from different backgrounds, could express themselves on this native tongue, on this blues.
And was that all improvisation, or did you compose it?
Oh no, just like the fellowship song, it has a melody and a harmony and everything, but we just reinterpret that through the drums.
Okay, what about dialogue with the ancestors? I'm getting really interested now.
Oh yeah, the dialogue with the ancestors, we have 3 different interludes. There's dialogue with the ancestors 1, 2, and 3. And that is, those songs are almost pure improvisation, but we start the improvisation with a phrase from one of the masters, one of the master drummers.
Oh, and
so
it's like who?
So on the case of Dialogue with the Ancestors 1, we have a phrase from one of the great drummers who inspired the melodic jazz drumming that inspired this record. His name's Max Roach. And so we have a little phrase from a Max Roach drum solo that we really like, that I really like, and we start with that phrase, and then we repeat that phrase, and then we morph out of that phrase, and everybody starts speaking through that phrase, and we create a whole world based on that. So it's a little dialogue with that one phrase from the master Max Roach. And then there's other dialogue is on a phrase by Papa Joe Jones, who's one of my favorite drummers. And the third one is based on a phrase that people call Big Sid, which is written for Big Sid Catlet by Max Roach. So adds a 3-generational dialogue, that one.
Well, what you just described sounds a lot like our Rogers Park writing group. Bill Morton and I, Bill Morton has the show before me, Sunday Morning with Bill Morton, and we, when we had a little bit more time, we went every week to the Rogers Park writing group, and they would give us a prompt to write. And it seems as if what you're talking about, what the Max Roach segments were like prompts.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this one little prompt, this one little idea that came from one of the great drummers in the lineage of the music, and we let that phrase kind of open up the way, and then we just have a communication with them through that.
Who was your some of your percussionist mentors?
So my percussionist mentors. I'll start at the beginning by saying that my first drum teacher was Santiago Forzan in Mexico City. After that, I worked with a really great teacher, Rodrigo Jimenez Crap. And then Rodrigo at some point told me, hey, I can't teach you anymore, but you should go study with my teacher. And he hooked me up with a teacher, a great artist and a great drummer called Hernan Hetch, an Argentinian drummer who was living in Mexico at the time. And he really pushed me into different ways, and it was an honor to work with him as well. After that, I came to New Orleans, and in New Orleans, I got to study with two great New Orleans drummers, Wayne Moreau and Johnny Vidakovich. This album is actually dedicated to Johnny Vidakovich because he's one of the guys who really got me into the perspective of melodic drumming. And then I came here to Chicago and I studied with Willie Jones III while I was at Northwestern University doing my master's. And those are some of the people that were very instrumental in my path, but I've studied with other people off and on and try to get inspiration and advice from many great drummers, as many as I can, always.
When you went to New Orleans, was that purposeful? Because that's that's the the start of a lot of jazz. So is that why you went to New Orleans?
Yeah, it was purposeful and it was very naive. Growing up in Mexico, I didn't really know too much about jazz history or anything, but I knew that it came from New Orleans. And I had been exposed to a lot of great jazz because people were doing some concerts down there, but I didn't really know or understand much of the history. And when it came time to see if I could do music for a living and apply to college, I applied to a bunch of different places to see who would give me the most money, because I didn't really have money to. As you can understand, it's expensive. And I applied to Loyola University in New Orleans, actually. And the only reason why I applied there is because I literally was like, okay, well, College of Music in New Orleans, Google, go. And Loyola popped up, and I saw that Johnny Vidakovich was teaching there, and I Googled him a little bit, and I learned what he was about, and he had taught some of my favorite drummers, so I was like, oh, maybe this will be a great guy to study with.
And you were able to study with him.
And I was able to study with him, and so it was like, founded, like I said, on that idea of, oh, New Orleans jazz, yes, but also very naive because I didn't know enough. And sometimes when you're 19, you jump across the world on a hunch without really knowing the ramifications of what that jump is going to do to your life. And in this case, I thought it turned out really beautiful, and I'm thankful for the path, but it was definitely very, very naive.
Well, it seemed as if you had a very clear picture, even though it was naive, but you had a clearer picture than a lot of other 19-year-olds about what you want to do.
Well, yeah, I knew music was the thing for me. I was very, very committed with that. My parents, both very, very, very focused individuals, and they really, really enforced discipline and academy and all that stuff. And when it came down to it, I was like, okay, I want to go study this music. I'm going to audition, and if I get a scholarship, I told them I would like you guys to support me in this, because being a musician was not their first pick for my career necessarily. And yeah, I got the scholarship that I needed to come here. And I think when you leave everything you've ever known, your parents, your girlfriend, the food, the houses, everything you can imagine, to go pursue something like music, you kind of have to have a clear perspective of what you want, because you can be naive, you can be a little whimsical, but that's a lot to leave to do it without no purpose, you know.
You were quite determined at 19 years old.
Yeah, like I said, naively determined, but determined.
How about Northwestern University? How'd you end up there? Is it kind of expensive?
Same story. When it came down to, I had a really great time in New Orleans, and I learned a lot. And I was like, well, not number one, I'd like to learn more. Number two, I'd like to stick around in the country, and I cannot stick around without another student visa.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna look for, and once again, I looked up at knowing a little bit more about history and stuff. I looked up at a bunch of different cities that I knew were good for music and especially for jazz. And I was like, okay, what are the programs that exist? And I applied to Northwestern, and I applied to a couple places in New York and in Boston and in LA. And Northwestern gave me the best scholarship, and that's why I came to Northwestern, because it was in a great city that had jazz, and they gave me the money that I needed so that I could actually go to school, because without that scholarship, I would have been impossible.
Do you have student debt?
Say that again? Oh no, well, that's the thing. I'm an immigrant, and I don't get the benefit of student debt.
So
I can't get FAFSA, so if I don't get a scholarship that supports me through it, and I find the means to do it, at least to my knowledge, no banks from the U.S. would give me a loan for that. So it's just, yeah.
Well, you were very lucky. It seems as if you have the talent, and you got some lucky breaks. Congratulations for that.
Lucky breaks indeed. I'm thankful for the lucky breaks.
And of course, you worked very, very hard.
Thank you.
Yeah. If our listeners want to learn more about you, Gustavo Cortiñas, where should they go?
I have a website, GustavoCortinasmusic.com. There's a full discography with all the press that has come out on all of my records. I have a bio. I have links to my YouTube channels and everything. When you can, I haven't mentioned this today, but from a few years back to now, I have focused on all my records having an audio-visual component. So this entire album that we're talking about, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see the videos of us playing in the studio. It's really powerful, and the same is true for my past 4 records. You can see them, and some of them are not only just. Actually, this is the first one that it's just us playing in the studio. The previous records, like I said, there's a lot of dialogue, social dialogue with the music and everything. And the videos, I worked with the videos with an amazing philosopher friend of mine, Zach Sievers. And he's a great filmmaker and philosopher, and we worked out with videos that would tell the stories that the music's trying to tell. So you can see that on all my previous record if you go, and it's just the same as my website, youtube.com /Gustavo Cortiñas music.
And yes, now that you mention it, you did study philosophy too. Who are some of your favorite philosophers?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, because I've been enamored and disenamored with a few, but I favorite is a thing because I have to like him, but I will tell you that Plato was the person that got me into philosophy, so it was very beautiful for me to read Plato. I think Nietzsche was a very revolting experience, but it was a really it led me to a lot of growth. I'll say that about Nietzsche. I really enjoy Unamuno. And I had a really interesting, I was able to take a seminar when I was at Loyola University, New Orleans, on Ludwig Wittgenstein. And I'm a really great fan of late Wittgenstein. Early Wittgenstein was very interesting. Later Wittgenstein really resonates with me. And it kind of helped me digest all the other philosophy that was troubling me at the time. So those are some of them.
Okay, thank you so much, Gustavo Cortinas, and his album is The Drum Also Sings. Thank you. And let's play one of your what should we play now?
When I came in, you were playing some really, really beautiful Latin American music, and some of it also seemed kind of ancestral. So I'd like to go with a song that kind of resonates that vibe.
Okay.
Track 7 on the record, it's called Anyay Pachamama.
And what does that mean?
It translates to Thank You, Mother Earth. Deep, deep gratitude to Mother Earth. And this is a song that I didn't write. It was written by Marita de Mahuaca, who's the amazing vocalist that you'll hear here. And she is a great representative for her people in international stages. And she's from the northern mountainous region of Argentina. And she's a native Argentinian singer. And what she does is really, really, really beautiful. So this is her bringing this original song, and as you will see, we don't necessarily play with her, but we play off of her, and we take her chant in a very, very different direction. But once again, I think it's a good representation of the plurality that exists within this project, and it's a little bit of a wild ride, but it's really beautiful, and I have a lot of respect and love for Marita de Mahuaca.
Thank you.